So the most important message of the gospel that you just heard is that you should all take care of your mothers-in-law. Thank you. Have a good day. I'm kidding. Oh, no, I'm not kidding you. That is an important message. But you would remember that if that was so short. Like, you know what he said? That we should take care of the mother. You would remember that, right? Anyway, I would like to focus a little bit on the suffering because we heard the first reading from Job. But before I jump into it, a story of a different kind of suffering. So once upon a time, there was a town. In that town, there were several churches. And all the churches were suffering from some kind of an infestation of squirrels. So they were trying to find out what to do so that, the problem would be gone. So the Presbyterians, they just simply, God wanted those squirrels to be here, then we have to embrace them. That there's nothing we can do about that, right? They were predestined to be here, so be it, right? The Baptists decided to be a little bit more creative, so they filled up the baptistry with water, and they even created some kind of a slide. They were thinking that the squirrels would be drowned in that baptistry, but the squirrels knew how to swim, and actually they loved the slide, so the number of squirrels doubled because they enjoyed that pool, right? The Episcopalians tried a different approach, and they left several bowls with whiskey, thinking that, the squirrels would get drunk and that would be the end of it, but, a bunch of drunken squirrels can make even more damage than the sober ones, right? But, of course, Catholics were the most creative of all, so they decided to do this, to fix the problem in the following way. They just simply baptized all the squirrels, and they saw them only twice a year, at Christmas and at Easter. That's it. So anyway, suffering can be quite annoying, but let's be a little bit more serious about that, because as you know, suffering is not something that we always laugh about. So the book of Job, I don't know whether you're familiar with the book. It comes from the Old Testament. It was written more or less, they estimate between the 7th and the 3rd century, most likely in the 6th century before Jesus. It tells a story of a just man. He was an Israelite. He does everything that is right. He always does what God tells him to do. And you know that Jewish people, they simply believe that if you do it right, God is going to bless you. He's going to give you things. If you sin, God is going to take things away from you. That's their belief. And interestingly enough, that book also tells a story of a bat. So devil, that's kind of interesting. The devil comes to God and says, let's take a bet. Because, he's got everything. Job is just simply enjoying his life. But what if he is hit with something that is going to, be uncomfortable for him? He's going to curse you. And he's going to turn his back towards you. And God said, okay, so let's do that. And then one day, Job loses a lot of things. He loses some of his kids. He loses his wealth. He loses animals, and his body is covered with sores. So in one day, so even his wife comes to him. She sees all of this. They cannot even think about it. How is it possible? And you think that you had a bad day, right? So in one day, and she comes to him and she says, Job, just curse God and die. You just cut it short. How can you live like this? It's unbearable. And he says, no. So he sits down and he's thinking, why it happened to me? What have I done? Did I do anything wrong, God? And God is silent. So his friends are coming. And instead of being really a true friend that is there to listen, to be with him in this particular case, they decided to think about different reasons why he is now being hit with all the calamities. So one of them is, oh, no, I know why it happened to you. And, he, elaborates about something that he thinks why it happened. The other one says, no, you don't know anything. I know better. So instead of helping this guy and being for Job, they just simply, try to come up with some kind of explanation. And he says, just shut up, guys. I want to think about it. You be here for me. I don't need your theory why it happened and what's the background of that. So they sit there eventually, right? And Job comes to two very important kind of conclusions. The first one, and this is something that it's not very easy to come to, but he actually does come to it. And he says, well, God gave, God took it away. May the name of God be praised. Right? I mean, that takes some guts. Right? Imagine that you are suffering from something, right? We don't get to that point too often, right? Oh yeah, God gave it to me, now he took it away. May he be praised. No, we immediately start complaining or ask him why, give it to me or give me more, right? So we are unlike Job. So that's the first thing, maybe something that you may start practicing in your own life. But the second conclusion is also quite stunning, because he comes to realization that actually, despite the fact that God has stricken him with all those difficult things, he still is convinced that God loves him. And actually, he even says, it's kind of an interesting thing. He says, well, he doesn't really love me. He likes me. He likes being with me. He knows who I am, and he still likes to hang out with me, so to speak, right? And that is an incredible thing. And he says, he cares. Wow, right? That God is there for me despite the fact that I am, suffering here. And that keep on the back of your mind, because I think it connects with the gospel, a little bit with the second reading too. I'm going to get to it. But the gospel is quite stunning, despite the fact that Jesus takes care of Simon Peter's mother-in-law, which brings us to the first point, that Simon Peter was married. So the first pope had a wife. Don't be surprised. It's in the Bible, right? It's in the Bible. You can check it out or reread the gospel. Number two, even mothers-in-law have to be taken care of, as I said earlier, right? But that speaks about some greater attitude of Jesus, right? Because we learned from the gospel that Jesus was preaching in many places, and so he came and healed the mother-in-law. It was Sabbath. So he didn't do anything publicly until the evening, until the sun set, because that would be against the law. But after sunset, they brought everybody to him. Everybody who was sick, everybody who was possessed by a demon. And he was healing all of these people, right? So he was preaching and healing, preaching and healing, preaching and healing. He probably enjoyed it very much. And kind of a side thought, right, that we have so much preaching done nowadays and not as much healing. I don't know what's the answer to that dilemma, but we don't see much healing. Actually, we do. If we have open hearts, if we really do something, and the young adults, we've done a couple of prayers together, and healing is actually happening. We will do something on the larger scale soon too, don't worry about that. So maybe healing is happening, but maybe we are not asking for the healing. Or maybe we're not asking for the healing correctly. And that's why we don't get. Maybe we're asking for everything else but healing. That's just another side thought, right? But anyway, so Jesus preaching and healing, preaching and healing. So we bring everybody. So he healed everyone. The next day, he gets up early in the morning. And they follow him and say, well, everybody's waiting, looking for you. And say, no, we got to go somewhere else because there's more people that need me and I need to go there. But what can we ascertain from that? Look, Jesus is not talking in today's gospel about going to heaven and eventually after our death, enjoying the heavenly banquet. He says nothing about it. All he actually demonstrates is that he cares about people now, right? Their needs now, right? The mother-in-law just had a fever. It's not the end of the world. She would definitely recover in a couple of days, maybe even in 2 days or 1 day. And yet, he addresses the need, right? As if Jesus wanted to show, yeah, I want you to come to heaven, obviously. Yeah, that's why he came. But he is not dismissing all the needs of now, of that very moment, right? So if we are, as you know, trying to become the disciples of Jesus Christ, and as I preached for the last couple of weeks about what's worth getting up and how should we become those growing disciples of Jesus Christ, maybe we should actually follow the same pattern and address the needs of people as they are now. Not sometime later, but now. Just like Jesus showed us, that's the way we are supposed to be doing. And what I'm trying to bring to your attention is another quality of a good disciple or a growing disciple of Jesus Christ. Because, you know, I mentioned that a few weeks ago that we should be changing the way we think about certain things, which is all true. I am not going to be denying what I previously had said, but there's another way of changing and knowing things. And it's not coming from our heads. It's coming from what we would call collectively a heart, right? You've all seen those commercials on TV about suffering children somewhere, right? They are malnutritioned. You've seen those commercials about even animals, right? Abandoned. Or we've seen other pictures of war, of you know, now they have floods in California. There's always something happening, right? And when you see those suffering people, and when you see especially suffering kids, I mean, it really grabs you by your heart, right? Because how can you escape that? How can you really move on if you see such a suffering at such a young age, right? And that's why we help people. We have sometimes those special collections for that matter, because it is so important for ourselves to be, number one, exposed to that, and secondly, to respond to it. Why is it so important? Because if we are not exposed to the suffering of other people, we will stop caring at all. Actually, there is even a way some people say, well, you know, while I'm walking down the street, I don't see sick people because they're in a hospital, right? So I don't see them. I presume they are not there. There is no such people, right? Because you don't see them. But of course they exist, right? And they exist and they suffer, and we just don't see them because everybody's walk down Fifth Avenue, you won't see many sick people, and you think that that's the world that it is. No, there's also another world, right? Including the migrants, right? Or asylum seekers, as we better call them these days. So we have to be exposed to that, because once we expose, it actually triggers or should trigger something in ourselves. If we are really honest about what we want to do as disciples of Jesus Christ. And this is not going to be right now some kind of a political statement, because I don't do politics. It is a spiritual assessment based on the facts, my brothers and sisters. Those people who have certain positions of power, who are seeing one massive shooting after another massive shooting, kids being killed at schools, and they do nothing about it, and yet they are yapping that there are Christians, give me a break. Amen. Give me a break. You cannot do that. You can say anything you want, but if you're not sensitive to that kind of suffering, what are you going to be sensitive to? Right? Newtown happened. They did nothing. They even shot their own friend in Congress, Gabby Gifford. They did nothing. So what do you have to do so that these people would finally say, okay, enough is enough? I'm sorry, but their hearts are turned into stone. Right? You lost your soul. And you might be getting ratings from NRAs or God knows what. You can't claim morally or ethically that you are a good Christian. Come on. It simply doesn't work. It's not true. It's not true. It simply is not true. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. You see, because we need to really expose our hearts to the suffering and respond to it. Unlike these guys from the book of Job. They responded the bad way, and maybe they were trying to make themselves important. But those of you who like to go to gym or like to exercise, you do that because you want to increase your muscles and then stuff and be fit and so on and so forth. But there is a different kind of exercise. There's a different kind of cardio. That's a spiritual cardio, right? When you are exposed to the suffering of other people and you respond to them at that moment. And that's why we need to practice this. Because we've been saying that for quite a couple of weeks already, that people are not leaving those churches because the theology is wrong, maybe because preaching is bad. They leave because they don't feel attached. They feel abandoned. They don't feel that they have some kind of a support group over there. And if something is happening, that people will come and step in and help them, right? They don't feel. That's why they leave. They look for it somewhere else. Or they stop looking altogether. And that's where the problem really starts, right? You're probably going to hear about it later on, the stats about what's going on these days, right? But this is what we really have to focus if we want to be honest about ourselves as disciples of Jesus Christ, right? It's not only that we come together and pray and we go home, because we have a good feeling about the liturgy was great, the music was fantastic, and we are upbeat and the weather is even nicer, right? We are here because we want to prepare ourselves for that and we want to support people. And that's why we are so much needed for our brothers and sisters. That's what it is all about. All right? When I was hungry, did you give me something to eat? When I was thirsty, did you give me something to drink? But you might be thinking, but I don't know how to do that. I didn't go through any training. I don't know how to really address those needs. Well, look into the second reading for a moment. You don't have to do it now. You can do it later. Because Paul says something really interesting there. He's so honest about himself, and he's so honest about the situation. He says, for the weak, I became weak, right? So he says, well, I am not trying to say that I'm any better than anybody else. I'm weak just like everybody else, and yet I'm needed and I can respond, right? So we can all do that. The question is, do we want to? Do we want to shelter ourselves? Maybe put some kind of a firewall in front of that heart so that we wouldn't feel the needs of other people? Or we're going to become vulnerable. Yes, it's going to hurt. And yes, we're going to be crying quite often because what we see. But that's why we are so needed. That's why our communities are so important. So my brothers and sisters, maybe the theoretical things are important for ourselves, but the practical would be even more important. So what that we have all the theology, that we have explanation to everything? Well, that's what those guys tried to persuade to Job. But they did not respond as they should have responded. That would have made a difference. So dear friends, maybe that's what we could pray for. Because if other people come across our church and they see loving community, they see how we treat those who are suffering in our midst, they would love to stay. because they would like to be a part of such community where people love one another, right? Even when you open up the Acts of the Apostles, one of the first paragraphs is everybody's like, look how they are loving one another. They're all amazed. What's so special in their faith that they are so loving one another, right? That's our role. We can do that too. But we have to stop sheltering ourselves from other people. We have to reach out to them. We have to see them where they are. It's not about becoming nosy and getting to know everything that goes on in their lives. That's not the right way. Right. But if you see something, do something, we would say. So dear friends, as we are coming together as aspiring disciples or aspiring, growing disciples of Jesus Christ, let us pray for the gift of being open to other people, to their suffering, and being ready and willing to help the way we can and sometimes the way we can't. But at least let's be there as brothers and sisters, as followers of Jesus Christ. And may God bless us in this task.